All right. Kevin back with you for another episode of the Million Dollar Relationships Podcast. And this is really awesome today. Victor, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. So my honor and pleasure.
Yeah, and I know you and I were talking before we started the recording here, and I was like, man, it's been a long time since you and I have seen each other or had a conversation. And I said, it's been years, and you're like, maybe even decades. and I think it has been over a decade.
I think it has been. Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, what a testament to the power of good relationships, because here we are, I mean, just picking up right where we left off, and it's really cool to experience that too.
Absolutely.
So, well, I am really excited to have this conversation with you, and especially right now for this part, because it has been so long since you and I spoke. This is going to allow me to kind of get an update on what you've been up to, because I'm sure there's been a lot of water on the bridge. So what we'll do is we'll start with just letting you share a little bit about who you serve, what you do, what motivates you to do what you do, that kind of thing, and just kind of give everybody an idea of who Victor Cheng is. And we'll just start there.
Yeah, so I'm an executive coach for founders / CEOs of software companies, so SaaS companies, software as a service, and love working with that audience. Been doing it sort of on and off the past, 20 odd years, a bit more focused the last 3 or 4 years. I've written books in that area, a book called Extreme Revenue Growth, a book called The Recession-Proof Business, talking about a lot of issues that face these kinds of founders that are trying to make that leap to CEO. Start off my career working in the Fortune 500 at a consulting firm called McKinsey & Company. It's the biggest producer of Fortune 500 CEOs in terms of their alumni, and sort of got really good at very, very big business. Did the whole entrepreneurial thing myself, and have found this little bit of a niche and sweet spot of trying to blend those two worlds, right? There's the wild west of the entrepreneurs. There's the structure and discipline and methodicalness of a Fortune 500 company. And then there's a space in between, which I call the puberty years of entrepreneurship, right? You're growing really, really fast. So most of my clients are growing 50 to 100% per year, usually a few $1 million in sales, maybe on the high end up to maybe 60 to 100 million, sort of in that range. And lots of headaches, but super, super fun to help them with. And it's amazing to watch these CEOs grow as individuals, not just on the top line, the bottom line. So that's been really, really fun for me.
Wow, very cool. Very cool. Okay, so now that we've kind of got some context set here, we'll switch gears, and I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. Have you ever been introduced to a person that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person? And Victor, I'm just really excited to hear your experience around this, and just let you share that with the listeners, because the goal in this is always to just inspire and motivate them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, rewarding relationships in their life.
Yeah, by the way, I love the focus around relationships. It's such an important thing. I really underappreciated that in sort of my early 20s.
Okay.
And I appreciate it in spades, right? Sort of at this stage of my life.
Yeah.
And just as context, so many of the people I am friends with, do business with, et cetera, a lot of these are from multi-decade relationships similar to yourself. And when you take care of people and they take care of you, it just sort of makes it really easy to continue that relationship. And suddenly time takes over and you're older and, been doing business with people for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
But two people come to mind, when you ask that question.
Okay.
Both more so on the personal side. One is a gentleman by the name of Rob Berkeley, who was in our world when we met. I don't know if you ever met him or not. Great guy, one of my 2 closest friends, and unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. And he was a brilliant business person, as well as just a really, really solid stand-up guy, right? And so I learned from him the importance of relationships, ironically, and friendships, and specifically, right? How to be an emotionally close friend, particularly amongst men, right? Which is a different kind of energy, than other kinds of relationships. So that was a big game changer for me. Totally changed my life in lots of ways. And he definitely left his impression on the world and on my life, before he passed. So that was definitely a game changer on my end.
So I want to dig in just a little bit, Victor, if you don't mind. So what is one thing that just really stands out for you in your life that happened as a result of your relationship with Rob that for a fact would have never happened without that relationship?
Yeah, so I think one thing in particular is 18 years ago. I don't know what year it is. It's bad. It's a bad sign when you think in decades and you're having a hard time. Right? So way back, decades plus, we were both friends personally as well as business colleagues professionally. And one thing is he knew me really, really well. And there was an opportunity that I was really overlooking that he noticed and just would not let it go until I pursued it because he thought it was a really, really good fit for me. Mm-hmm. And, this area was, prior to working with software CEOs, I worked a lot in the management consulting industry, originally as a practitioner, but also teaching other people how to enter that field. And I'm very well known in that field. So people applying to the McKinseys of the world, Bain, Boston Consulting Group, and such. And so he really pointed me in that direction. And I get stopped literally in the back alleyways of Panama City near the Panama Canal from people who want to take my selfie, like at night.
Wow.
Yeah. And that all happened. It started from Rob really pushing me. Like, you're an idiot if you don't pursue this. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And so that was a big change. So I think knowing me well and knowing what's a good fit for me and sort of being a second set of eyes on a blind spot, right? So I think people who know us well can serve that function. And he certainly did that in spades.
That is awesome. Wow. What an awesome experience for not only for you and him, but for all the beneficiaries on the other end of that, all the lives that have been impacted because he suggested it and you thought, oh yeah, that is in alignment with who I am and the way I want to show up. And so I'm going to go ahead and take your advice. And that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. So, okay. So you mentioned there was one other person that you wanted to honor as well.
Yeah. So my other close friend, Michelle Piper, she's been a great friend for, over a decade as well. So let me think, 11, 12 years or so. Okay. And very, very different background, right? So I'm like kind of a hardcore business guy. She's a therapist by training and really just introduced me to the world of emotionally relating, working through past relational issues, and really having a very deeply satisfying life, right? So my whole career has been around how to be successful. And I figured that out, fairly early, both for myself and for others. But how to have a satisfying life, which is very, very different than a successful life. That's right. It's a different set of, it's a different domain. It's a different set of skills and habits. And they were not ones they had, 10 years ago. So she really got me started on understanding that world. It's its own version of a rabbit hole, which I went down real deep. and just that's been like a total life changer as well. It's certainly, but in a different way.
It's interesting because I've become really good at picking up on this stuff over the years, and just from the moment I saw you on Zoom, and just the way that you smile, just your demeanor, you can just tell when somebody is just genuinely happy, genuinely content with their life, and you totally come across that way. It's so. I'll ask you the same question then in regard to Michelle. What's one thing that really stands out for you that came as a result of your and Michelle's relationships that for a fact would have never happened without that?
Yeah, it falls ironically, falls under, or appropriately rather, falls under the category of relationships. Okay. So, when she and I first met, I had, let me think, maybe one friend of modest connection, right? In terms of
Okay.
emotional closeness. And now I have, gosh, it's an abundance of riches, on the friendship side. And so people who really care about me, who I really deeply care about, who I feel very connected to, and vice versa. My relationship with my kids has gotten way better in the last 10 years, and been very intentional about that, and how some of my own history has interfered with that in the past, and having to work through, some of those bad habits I learned in my own childhood to not repeat them in their childhood. So I think just overall, all my relationships on the personal side have really, there've been more of them. They've gotten deeper. They've all flourished. And that's been really quite remarkable over the last 10 years or so. So that's huge. So I've been super grateful for that to happen.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because I've had the same exact experience. I have been blessed. And, as entrepreneurs, and this is my firm belief, as entrepreneurs, relationships are the most valuable asset we possess. And just as people in general, relationships are they're like our lifeblood, and the more valuable relationships that we have, like you said, that we can just be completely open and transparent and candid with, and kind of like, my buddy Jesse says, one of the things he always says is nothing to hide and nothing to prove. And that we can show up that way, and they show up that way for us, because and when we can have those kind of relationships in our lives, I'll tell you, it just makes life, and certainly business too, that much more rewarding. And so I just really
does.
I just really want to thank you for taking the time to have this conversation and to share what you did, because, I know we thought long and hard about naming this podcast, and the whole name of $1 Million Relationships is kind of like, because the focus isn't on the revenue, but it's on the relationships. And as an entrepreneur, revenue is the byproduct of having great relationships, and not the other way around. And for anybody listening to this, Victor, who says, man, wow, I really like Victor, Kev, I love the way he shows up. Is there a way for them to find out more about the work that you're doing in this world and connect with you a little bit more?
Yeah, just go to, I blog at a couple places, but the main one these days is a website called sasceo.com, SASCEO.com. It's where I write about the software industry and how to be a founder and a CEO in that field. You can also search for my name on Amazon. I got a couple books on various business topics. It's Victor Cheng, spelled Cheng. And so those are probably the two best places to learn more about me.
Perfect. Well, once again, I want to thank you for taking the time to have this conversation. Any last things you want to share before we call it a wrap?
Yeah, I do. I love that you were talking about kind of the importance of relationships and how it goes beyond, like, the money is the byproduct, right? Not be Machiavellian around, oh, I should know Kevin because I can get $1 million out of him, that kind of culture. And I know I've really come to appreciate that, as I mentioned, over the decades. And I'll sort of give my pitch, if I will, on why people should pay attention to this stuff. So you get one or two things out of relationships. You either get something of benefit, or you get something that's of such benefit it's priceless, right? And I kind of tend to focus more on things that are pretty priceless. You give and you give, people give back, not as a transaction, but as a relational way of sort of being. And it just really benefits your life. And so I think I've just, we've talked about sort of 2 high impact relationships in my life, but it kind of goes very broad and very deep across dozens and dozens, as I know, probably hundreds for you. And it's just something very much worth paying attention to. And I'm so glad you do this and you contribute to the world in this way, because a lot of people do not pay attention or enough attention to relationships. And if you don't have them, you don't have much in the end. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah. I mean, that has totally been my experience too, in that, relationships are just the most valuable thing that we possess, and everything else stems from that. And so thank you again for taking the time to have this conversation. I really appreciate it. And Victor, it was so awesome catching up with you, man.
Nice. Thanks, and thanks. I appreciate it.